Hello, my name is Dart Fox, and the purpose of this video is to show you what my colleagues and I have created, our tissue modification device. I want to show you its controls and a little bit how it functions and some of the hardware aspects. Our patent application date was 12 September 2013, and the idea is that through gradual tissue dilation you can open a stricture without further trauma to the patient. So controls overview, I have a black button and a red button, and a toggle switch to toggle back and forth between auto and manual mode. There's a black knob which adjusts specific settings in each mode. There's the rest of it is just kind of like a infusion machine. There's a syringe clamp, a drive block, and then for initial adjustment when placing the syringe, there's a release lever here on the back you just push in, and that will allow you to slide the drive block back and forth. Here is a sensor on the drive block, it's a pressure sensor right there, and then the pressure sensor link here is a section of wire that goes into the bottom of the device. Then underneath is where all of the electronics are housed, and there is a long linear potentiometer in here which connects to this arm right here, which is connected to the drive block, which you can see, so I can always know the drive block's position. Then the back under here, the various electronic components, it has dual microprocessors, and then all the electronics necessary to drive a stepper motor here. So that concludes the initial summary, and I will start again with machine operation. Okay, now we start with the manual mode of the machine. So if you just want to manually dilate something and see pressure and see feedback from that, this would just be just like dilating with a manual syringe, but the machine's going to give you some pressure feedback, and it's also just going to hold the pressure for you. So as a demonstration, I have a syringe connected to a PSI pressure gauge, and I'll put this in here. It's important to get the syringe in here correctly. There's a slot right here where the finger pull on the syringe fits, and then you would slide the drive block into position this way, making sure that this screw clasp here is in its open position, and then slide this in like so, and then always make sure you pull this back some so it's fitted against here. Place the clamp to hold the syringe in place. Now on the display we're going to see that it says use toggle to select mode right here. We've done that, so we're there. It's in manual mode now. press red button to begin. So red button to begin. Now it's going to show you block pressure, which is the pressure on this sensor here. So as you rotate this toward the top of the syringe, you can see if I turn it a certain way and tighten it down, the numbers start to climb because I'm actually applying pressure on that sensor. Initially you want that snug up against the top of the syringe and this block pressure to equal 0 here. So once you've done that, we're ready to begin. And it says that press black to begin manual dilation. So we're going to press the black button here. There we go. So now we are officially in manual mode, and I have my pressure gauge here. So then you're going to ask, like, well, gosh, I could do that with a regular syringe. Well, and you can. But this is just a reference mode for the automatic mode that I'm going to show you after this. So now what this knob does, you can dial in the amount of pressure that you want to exert on your dilator at the end of the syringe. So as you turn this up, it's going to activate the motor, and then you're going to see that these numbers on the display, the drive has 2 psi of pressure on it, and the knob is dialed in at 2 psi. And yes, incidentally, all of the numbers that you'll see on the display as far as exertion, because you'll see other numbers that represent time. When it says pressure, all of those pressures are in psi. So, and you can see my pressure, my manual pressure knob correspond to that. So if we go up to 5, there's 5 psi. And the display says 10, it's 10 psi. If I dial in 15 psi, it says 15 psi on the manual gauge. So we can continue to go up and up and up and up. Of course, there's very few times that you would actually probably want to do this. You would probably want the automatic mode to work its magic, and that's what I'm about to show you next. So in either mode, manual or auto, the red button is always a panic button. So you can always press that and it will return to start. So press that and it will travel back as fast as it can to relieve the pressure on the syringe. So that's pretty much manual mode, and we'll move on to the next section. Okay, so here we are, we're back, and we've just seen manual mode, and now we're going to move on to auto. So you notice that the display still says manual here. I'm going to use the toggle switch to flip this over to automatic mode. And we're not going to use our PSI gauge this time. I have I have this Boston Scientific catheter, and it's a 15 millimeter dilation catheter, and I have a section of silicone rubber tube over it to represent my stricture. So it's really thin walled rubber tube, and then I have a little bit of lubricant on that so it slides on nicely, and then we're set. So there we go. I'm going to orient this so I can pick this up and then show how that dilates. So here we have our syringe, and we're going to go through our syringe placement again. I'm going to use the release lever on the back of the drive block here. Slide it back, easy. And then my top of the syringe body goes there, and then I'm going to place the top of the syringe, the plunger, right in that notch right here in between that and the sensor. Again, just like manual mode, everything's the same, and that slides in, and I'm going to lock that down. I'm going to take the drive block, I'm going to pull this way just slightly, just to make sure that that's on this surface here. And I'll rotate this locking screw slightly. We're going to look at the display, press red button to begin. We're going to do that. It's going to display block pressure just like manual mode. There's going to be some additional instructions down there. Then I'm going to make sure that the drive block clamp is tight, but that block pressure still reads 0 right there. So okay, so everything's set for automatic mode. It doesn't matter the position of the knob. I usually like to keep it counterclockwise. So after we did manual mode earlier, this knob was still at its setting when we hit the red button to exit manual mode. So all the pressures were taken away and everything reset. So yeah, just give the knob a twist to the counterclockwise position, and we can go ahead and proceed with pressing the black button. Press black button to begin auto dilation. So here we go. So what auto dilation is going to do, it's going to take up the pressure and push the dilator out to the walls of the stricture itself until it meets its first amount of pressure. So initially I had a calibration routine here to calibrate to see how much pressure it actually takes to move all this, and I found that most of the disposable syringes were really close to each other, including the dilator itself. So I have a default 6 psi that it pushes in the beginning. So now you're looking at the display, and let me try to center this in the frame and zoom in to the display just so I can show you what the display is telling us. Here's the display. There's a little bit of animation here, but that's just to keep your eye trained on the numbers. This side of the display here represents time. This side here represents pressure. And then there's a current and a target. Current pressure is represented here. And you want that current pressure to drop below the target pressure. So our idea is that if you exert pressure against tissue, after a while it will relax. There is some fibrous tearing, but nothing to be alarmed about. And that the pressure will drop below the target pressure. When that happens, the machine's going to push more fluid into the dilator and then dilate that right back out to where it was. So to keep that pressure up above the target pressure. So that's how the pressures are working. So, and you can hear it, the motor advancing little by little. That's this silicone tube stretching out under the pressure of the dilator. Now we also used some actual tissue. I think we used swine parts, and the effect on those were about the same. This particular silicone tube here, if I could get this back in the frame here, I can dilate this out in manual mode, and the pressure will be about 40 psi once I get out to the dilator's maximum size of 15 millimeters. Using manual mode, or automatic mode, I can dilate that out to the same size with this clock here at about an hour and 40 minutes. Dilate out to the same size with 12 psi. Just allowing the machine to do its job and dilate in a slow manner. So now let's go over, and I'm going to talk about the time side of the display. Here under current is the amount of time that it's had to wait before actually some type of reaction. So some type of stretching has occurred. If you see time on the current scale, if that's not a 0, then it's taken, see there it's a 1 right now. It's taken more time to actually dilate whatever the walls of your dilator are pushing against. And the target time here is the amount of time that it will wait with nothing happening. If no stretching is happening, then it will wait up to 20 minutes, and these are in minutes. It will wait up to 20 minutes for something to happen. The black knob comes in. You can adjust that down to a more aggressive scale. Here, let me zoom back out again. Sorry. Here's the black knob here. So as I twist this, I can dial this down, and I can make the machine more aggressive, and this will tell it not to wait as long for something to happen. Now see, we're up to 1 minute, and okay, there it went. So that's good. So the pressure still stays at 6 here. If this gets to if the current time gets to its target time, it will increase this by 1, the target. So it's increasing pressure if you're telling it to be more aggressive by not waiting as long. And then of course we're 6 minutes into auto mode here. I've dilated things for hours and hours and hours, probably a maximum of 9, and depending on the item that I'm trying to dilate. If you put this in a metal tube, the pressure just goes off the scale, pretty much. And the top of the scale being, for this machine, it's capable of pushing 120 psi without damage to the machine or the syringe or anything like that I've found so far. So, and of course, at any time, the patient wants to deflate the dilation, the dilation device, just plus red, and it will jump out. So here we'll go back to the initial screen. We're still in auto mode. I'll use black, or I'm sorry, red to begin. Our block pressure is still 0. It will dilate out just over the target PSI. So the next thing I wanted to show you was the progress number here at the bottom. The progress is how far you have advanced from the starting position, and that's where the linear potentiometer comes into play here. So it's tracking how far the drive block has gone from the point where you started it. So there's along this whole run here, the linear potentiometer has 1,024 ticks that it can monitor. So so far we've gone 3 of those ticks. So I wanted to put something on the display that shows the progress. It doesn't show in millimeters just because I don't have any electronics down here to show you the shape of the stricture, and you cannot accurately track what's going on inside the stricture without some additional electronics down here. So I've just shown this progress to give you some idea. And after we use this machine more and we get a feel for it, time and pressure, and of course the progress scale here at the bottom I think will become more useful. So I think that sums up auto mode for now. Thank you.